Okay. So we have 11 people in here right now. If I can get you guys tapping on the screen, please. Tapping is free. It's like clapping. And if we can share the live. So the best way to share out the live is if you hold the finger down on the Beaver Politics page right there, a screen will pop up and then you can share it to multiple people at once. So you just go send to all of your different friends instead of sending one share to 15 people. It counts as more shares, so our shares should go up then. And then if you want, join the team. It's the little heart up at the top right by our name. If you followed us, it's 1 coin to do that. That helps boost the live as well. And when we have our guests on, if we can, if we have any gifts that we can give them, that also helps boost the live as well. Comments really help boost the live. So gifting, sharing, tapping, and joining the team and commenting are like the ways to boost the live. It'll get more people in here for us. And then the last thing, we do have subscriptions on now. So if you want to support the channel, right now there is a sub fiesta. So if you're doing a monthly subscription, then you get 30% off your first month. Since this is the first time that we're having from subscriptions, you can subscribe to us. It's $5.49 a month, but 30% off right now for the first month if you do subscribe to us. And that's just the little star down at the bottom. With the subscription, you get access to really cool emotes that we have in here. And then you also get access to the Discord that we created as well.
And the Discord, let me tell you, Nerdy has knocked it out of the park. When we talked about how we imagine this, and if this like starts with a little seed, right? Every little good idea. So I might get emotional a little bit, but she really did turn it into something special. You know, we talked about this Canada-wide, and she really made it happen on Discord. So when you look at Discord, you're going to see all of those provinces and people coming together to work together on different projects like Beavers will do to kind of create waves and change, right?
Yep.
Well, I'm very grateful, you know, not having the, you know, I know nobody's born with information about TikTok, but at the same time, if there's one thing smartphones make me feel is, I can't use that word, it's too ableist. But, you know, not smart, right? Like, not smart. I use 10 basic features. I'm really comfortable with them, and that's kind of it. But I do appreciate Nerdy coming on board with us to help us navigate some of these waters here. It's been, yeah, it's just been when you work together, you know your strengths and you know where your strengths need to be supported. And so it's about bringing in and acknowledging that you don't have that information and finding it because somebody does.
And picking up that subscription will allow you on that Discord and us to start working together and kind of bringing those plans together or bringing their ideas to the table. So I'm stoked.
So if you want to join and be part of the Beaver base and say you want to do a stream on Indigenous issues or on disability issues, you could take your own little Beaver path.
So I just put in the comments the emotes that I created, the cool, so you get those emotes when you join, when you subscribe to us. So
nice.
They're super cute.
They really are
cute, super cute, and very Beaver, very Beaver based, I must say.
There's even a damn in there. So if you want to be like, oh, damn, then you can put the emote in there. Damn.
So perfect.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, we're
so who did all your emotes and artwork?
I get them off of Canva. I create them on there. Yeah.
And we've been just scrolling on TikTok in their pictures and on CapCut and different apps for ourselves. So we met Nerdy.
I use Chat GPT, but you can get one for pictures as well as that. And I ended up buying them separate. Turns out you could buy them together in one app. One of those moments I had. It cost me $60.
So we're heading up. I hate to interrupt everybody, but we're heading up to $5.59.
And we have 15 people in the room, and let's get this more likes. We get more people in here. I'm sure once people see Xhojin up there, they're going to be, what? Ooh, we gotta stop in, have listen to what this fella's saying. How's your wife tonight?
She's good.
Yes.
She's actually watching in here now.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
So no, she's doing good. It all went fine. I'm very happy.
Most excellent.
Most excellent. Yeah, so these just it's nerdy's like a breath of fresh air into our little project here in terms of next steps and growing and expanding. And we certainly feel a need to expand. So we're glad to see so much interest in having this type of conversation. Right? I think that's the bottom line. So it's 5 o'clock. We're going to go back to our regularly scheduled program now. And we're going to launch it with a bit of a conversation from Mrs. Radical, and then I'll step in. And Xhojin, then it'll be your turn.
All right.
Welcome to Beaver Politics. We started a little bit too early. I'm going for the goth look. Welcome to Beaver Politics. This is a talk show about social justice issues and Canadian politics. And we're excited to bring you this conversation. We have creators from across Canada joining us to bring content and real serious discussion. And I thank you for joining us, and we're going to hand this over to the missus.
I hear somebody's microphone quite loudly in the background. I don't know, flicking papers or something. Just some FYI. Anyway, so what I'd like to say is a little bit about Beaver politics and how this next hour is going to look. We have 3 moderators in here that are helping to keep conversation flowing in the comments. Nerdy's our tech person. She's our new 3rd Beaver here. And we like to bring people up into the box just to promote our live while we're actually doing it. But for the first half hour, Xhojin's conversation will be a conversation by himself or between us moderators and him. We just want to improve the live numbers. And at the end of that conversation is when people can start asking their opinions and offering, or asking questions about the information that's just been presented. And that's how we end the show that way. So just those couple little housekeeping pieces about how we do our business here for this hour. And again, it's about Canadian politics, social justice issues. Right now, we're doing a series on the BC election because it's only less than 2 weeks away now. And because of that, we thought Xhojin would be an excellent guest to have on because he's familiar with platforms. He understands how to read a platform, which is half of the battle sometimes, where to find it, how to get there, how to read it. So with no further ado, we're going to bring Xhojin up and listen to what you have to say.
All right. Well, thank you so much. First, I'll just say how to pronounce my name because I've had so many people ask me. It's just Xhojin, X pronounced like a Z, like xylophone or Xerox or something. So just Xhojin. And I guess I'm here to talk about the BC political parties, just the 3 main ones, who they are, what their platforms are, and what kind of sneaky shit they're hiding. Because some of them say things that might sound good to people, but if you look a little deeper into them, they're kind of misleading. If anyone wants to interrupt me during the thing with questions from the moderators, go for it. I've quite a bit of stuff, so I'm probably going to kind of try to get through a lot of it quickly. If we have time issues, just yell at me, I guess. So first, the NDP is our main party. It is a centrist party, mostly pro-union, pro-worker, pro-small business. They've been in power for a number of years. We're pretty familiar with them for the most part. The Green Party does not really fit on the political spectrum. They're somewhat to the left of the NDP on some issues and somewhat to the right of them on others. They have an emphasis on the environment, on people, somewhat on fiscal responsibility, and they tend to have like a pretty pragmatic approach to their solutions. And the cons, or the conservatives, are the old BC Liberal Party. I think Miss Lotus Lady did like a big breakdown on them last episode. Is that right?
He did.
So yeah, they're the old BC Liberal Party. They kind of splintered apart when John Rustad went a little alt-right with his climate denialism and anti-vaccine stances. Then they started doing better, and the BC Liberals came crawling back and rejoined him. And it's the same party. It's Christy Clark's party, just with a different leader and a different name, but all the same stuff. So to break down their platforms into a bunch of different things, I'll start with like economy, housing, and cost of living.
Please.
So the NDP, well, again, they're the ones we have in power. We kind of know, but some of the stuff they've already done, they've had the record number of housing startups. I believe we're like first in Canada for housing startups. They banned short-term Airbnb rentals, which did bring rent prices down slightly. And they allowed multifamily dwellings on any and all lots in BC, which makes it a lot easier to increase density in neighborhoods. Excuse me. They are offering to bring in a tax break of $500 per person or $1,000 per household if they're reelected. And their big platform thing is they're saying they'll finance 40% of the cost of new homes for new homeowners. It's slightly misleading the way they word it, so I want to break it down more. What they're saying they'll do is provide land or funding to subsidize 40% of the cost of any new build to the developer. The developer is then required to pass that savings on to a new homeowner and sell the house at 60% of market value. Then that homeowner, when they sell the house or when 25 years goes by, they have to reimburse that 40% back to the government, plus 40% of any equity that's accrued in the house. So if your house goes up in value, it's pretty fair actually, but if your house goes down in value, the government still gets their 40% back, even if you sold at a loss.
Right.
So it does help people buy new homes, but the government is kind of mitigating any risk to them. The Conservatives' plan, they want to privatize our insurance, privatize ICBC, which if you guys look at Alberta's privatized insurance costs, they are way more expensive than ours now. This is probably a bad idea, in my opinion. They promise to remove a whole bunch of corporate regulations. They haven't really said exactly what, though. And then their big housing thing is they're saying they will give $1,500 this year, increasing to $3,000 tax write-offs, I think per month on your mortgage and rent, which might sound like, holy shit, I'm going to get so much money back. I'll save like $10,000 this year. But you have to look at the fine print. That number is based on 5% of your total housing costs. And most people don't, like 5% of most people's total housing cost is not $1,000 a month. That's like maybe 50 or 20% of their costs even. So this plan does not really help middle class and lower class or lower income people. This plan really helps really wealthy people who have really big housing costs. Because if you are paying like 20 grand a month for your McMansion, 5% of that is a lot more, right? You'll hit that cap way easier. So this housing plan benefits wealthy people a lot more than most regular Canadians. The Green Party's plan for housing and the economy, excuse me, is they want to lobby for a 4-day work week. They want to increase taxes on people making over $350,000 a year by 22%. So basically add a whole nother tax, like marginal tax bracket on wealthy people. They plan $1.5 billion in funding and public land for affordable housing builds. And they plan vacancy rent controls to prohibit landlords from evicting people and immediately raising the rent. So the rent price would have to carry through vacancies. They also have plans to increase tiny home communities for homeless people. Sonia Firstino mentioned a couple different cities or areas that have pilot programs for it, and they want to increase that across the province. The next one, resources and environment. The NDP wants to speed up mining permits while maintaining a focus on environmental impact and First Nations consultation. Without getting too much into it, I have a tiny bit of knowledge on this because I have vested interest in a mine being built in BC that was completely permitted and consulted with while the NDP was in power, and it worked perfectly fine. I'm not sure why it has to be sped up or why the Conservatives think they have to do anything to make it easier, because it's quite possible right now. They also want to scrap carbon tax. This is their new kind of big thing that ruffled a lot of feathers a couple of weeks ago. And I have contacted people in the federal NDP who say they want to replace the carbon tax with legislative, like, emission caps. So companies just can't pollute above a certain level without being fined.
Okay.
The Conservatives, well, this is a big one. I said John Rustad was kicked out for climate denialism. So they are basically saying either climate change doesn't exist or that it's not important. He's kind of flip-flopped back and forth between those two things. He actually went on record talking to Jordan Peterson and said, this is a quote, he does not understand why carbon-based beings are afraid of carbon, which is kind of like saying we're made out of water, how can we drown? It's a little bit ridiculous. But yeah, they want to scrap carbon tax.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, they also want to scrap fuel emission standards in BC. So if you want to be able to, you know, not clean the glow plugs on your diesel, I guess, vote for them. I don't know. They want to expand all resource extraction, mining, forestry, liquid natural gas, oil, coal, and water. I've covered this on the federal level. This is also briefly mentioned in, it was conservativebc.ca/ideas, but their current page does not have this. You have to use a Wayback Machine or an archive to go to an older version of their page, because a whole bunch of the stuff I'm covering, when they started getting flack for it, they went and redacted their page and deleted some stuff.
Okay.
If you go to like archive.today and look up that website address, you can probably still find it, though I have a copy on my computer right now. They want to end, currently, all of the provinces Canada have agreement to protect 30% of our land by 2030. And the Conservative Party wants to scrap that and just ignore that and not protect 30% of our land. And then another really big one, they want to criminalize activism and hold environmental and native activists and groups that support them financially liable for any impediment to resource development.
What
so
the
basically,
fuck?
this is actually something they have said. So they want to go hold like the Wet'suwet'en financially viable for delaying, shutting down, stopping any kind of resource extraction, which I shouldn't have to say how horrible this is, but it's horrible. Okay,
It is very
I'll
horrible.
admit I'm biased on this, but I think anybody should be biased on these things. The Green Party, they want to increase carbon tax on corporations and use the extra money to increase rebates for average citizens. They want to end fossil fuel subsidies, no new liquid natural gas, no fracking, no new pipelines, and they want the government to invest in solar and renewable energy projects, and they commit to that protecting 30% of BC's land by 2030. Education. NDP, again, we kind of know what we have. They don't have any new plans that I could find. They said they'll continue to support Xhojin. The cons want to end Xhojin, even though, for the record, like John Rustad voted for it when he was in Christy Clark's government. They're the ones that implemented it. A big one that conservatives want is government funding for private or homeschooled education. And they want a conservative watchdog group to ensure what they say, ensure that books in school are free from bias or indoctrination. Which,
Yep.
how you can go and police what books go into a school when your claim is that you don't want any bias or indoctrination is a little bit strange. They want to protect free speech. I want to do an aside here and say the executive director of the Conservative Party, Angelo Isidoro. Oh, we got some feedback here.
This is radical. I think her.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Angela Isidoro, the executive director of the Conservative Party, was like a free speech club president in university who got in trouble and got taken to the human rights court for leading a bunch of people chanting like neo-Nazi slogans at a bar. So their idea of free speech is that whole dog whistle, okay?
Right.
The Green Party. Oh, actually, one other aside. Another TikToker on here, Warrior Philosopher, has been covering this a lot. The Alberta and federal conservatives have been trying to get a bunch of like pro-Christian history books put in schools in Alberta. BC conservatives have not said they're going to do this, but when the federal conservatives and other provincial conservatives are pushing for this, I would say it's a possibility. Okay, Green Party. They promised $1 million funding to provide all kids, all schools in BC with laptops for education. They promised $250 million for childcare for kids under 5 years old. And they promised $5 million in funding for sexual violence prevention programs in British Columbia colleges and universities. Any questions so far?
2,000.
Healthcare, okay, healthcare and law enforcement. NDP, again, they've been in power. We kind of know what they have done. They've hired 900 new doctors in the last year alone. They are currently building or expanding 29 hospitals in BC. I think this is like first or second place in all of Canada. So while healthcare funding is admittedly a problem, like I just spent some time in the hospital with my girlfriend, and like there's people in the hallways. There is problems. BC is doing way better than most of Canada with the NDP. They've implemented decriminalization, which, for the record, just means you can possess under a certain amount of different drugs. You can no longer use them in public. That has been changed. So anyone like Pierre Poilievre talking about that, he's wrong. You can only possess it and use it in the privacy of your own home. They want to expand pharmacists being allowed to prescribe certain non-narcotic drugs so you don't have to go to your doctor. They promise to expand and the program allowing foreign doctors and nurses to become like accredited in BC and practice here. They want to end labor requirements for sick notes from your doctor, so your work or union can't demand that, so doctors don't have to waste their time writing sick notes. And they want to cover travel costs for cancer patients. One of the big things, both parties have talked about implementing mandatory rehab for addicts, especially homeless addicts. The NDP has said this, but their plan is to use existing mental health laws. So the addict would have to be like shown to be an immediate and clear danger to themselves or someone else in order to commit them into rehab. The conservatives, on the other hand, have no such requirements. They just say if you're an addict, we will throw you in rehab. They haven't said how or or how it wouldn't violate people's rights, just that they will do it. They've also said they want to completely, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add a thought to this stream of a conversation about the involuntary confinement. You're right when you say that the laws have been on the books that allows this to happen and has for years. When somebody is in a psychotic state, for instance, you know, they may be doing self-harm, they may be a threat to the community. So my question, so I just want to thank you for bringing this piece of information up, because I thought, are they going to be putting in new legislation in order to accomplish this goal? When to me, because I've seen plenty of people locked up for 3 days, 4 days, and then when things settle down, they can be released under the Mental Health Act, because there's always a time stamp put on it. And so I thought to myself, well, what, I was envisioning the scenario, what you were saying maybe the Conservatives might put in, where they haven't identified their mechanism of implementation, because that's huge. Right now, that mechanism of implementation is securely guarded by ethical legislation that's been negotiated with the medical facilities. And so I think that's an important for people to take comfort in terms of,
I do too.
NDP are going to do what? They're just going.
I think their plan is way more ethical. As someone who does have family members with mental health issues that we have had to hospitalize against their will, it is extremely difficult to do so. It's not like you can just say it and grab it and throw them in there. Like it's really hard to actually get help for those people. So, like, I have qualms about any kind of mandatory incarceration or rehabilitation for addicts, because I believe in people's rights. But using the existing mental health laws, I think, is like a far more fair and ethical way to tackle this problem, because there are obviously addicts who are not in a mental state to make like legally binding decisions for themselves, right? So I don't think the NDP's thing is like a huge issue, but the Conservative one, which I will get to, is. Go ahead.
I'd just like to chime in a little bit, just because I am a frontline worker and I'm seeing this real time daily. And I'm seeing, it's mental health coupled with these immensely strong drugs. Strong drugs. And when Harper changed those acts that he changed, those people were there were some people that had strong support systems that they were able to be transferred into something, but there were other people that didn't have those strong support systems that were just tossed out into the streets, right? And so I'm seeing those people in a real time way showing up to my doorstep, and they're not well, and they can barely make the decision to decide whether they can trust me if a pair of socks are safe. Okay, that they get a baseline, just a pair of cotton socks. Is that safe? And I can spend, honestly, probably about 4 or 5 hours trying to convince that individual for a pair of socks that they're safe. So they need those special supports put in place for them. And I'm a mom with a special needs person and individuals, and I take people losing their rights very seriously. This isn't an easy conversation.
Absolutely.
I just want to quickly say the big difference between the two plans is that the NDP's is science-based and health-based, because we have a chief scientist who authored the report. And there's also all the communities were consulted. I don't think the Conservative Party has any of that.
No. Part of, I'll just start the cons thing now. Part of their thing that they want to do that's sort of akin to this is in their redacted declaration on their website that you need the Wayback Machine to go see. Is they want to make tent cities illegal. So they essentially want to criminalize homelessness. So I have zero trust in them
No.
being ethical when it comes to like mandatory rehab for homeless addicts when they quite literally are trying to outlaw being homeless.
Yeah.
I just want to add to, in our community, like of the homeless, like there are a lot of people that'll, it's a hot button topic what you're talking about, I'm sorry. But
No, it's all good. It's all good.
I'm living in a world, and I'll honestly say that some people have gone feral, for lack of a better word. And they can't accept some of, even a bed sometimes. Sometimes I can say to them, I've got a room, I've got some food, I've got all of these things, and they can't accept that. They need a tent, they need a shower, they need to pack some food away. Because they don't trust this world anymore, and I don't blame them. And so to make that illegal is unconscionable.
Oh, I agree. So yeah, they had forced involuntary rehab care for the Conservatives, close all supervised consumption sites. For the record, I think that they're at about 55,000 overdoses prevented at safe consumption sites right now.
Yeah.
So if they close them, that's like another 55,000 dead people potentially. They want to reduce administration costs of hospitals. They don't really say how, but any kind of cutting costs at the hospitals probably not what we need in our healthcare system right now. They want to compensate healthcare workers that were fired over being anti-vax. Doesn't say anything else about paying healthcare workers more, just compensate those ones.
Oh yeah, they want to make sure that they're hard back. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, they want to increase privatized healthcare options in BC. They want to defend, this is a quote from their article, defend, not defund the police. So they want to increase police funding and police powers. They want to appoint judges, they call them principled judges, who will use maximum sentences for all cases. They do say they want to reopen mental health clinics, so I'll give them credit for that one. They want to end the use of taxpayer money to house addicts because creating shelters lowers land values.
I just want to interject quickly. Do we really trust people like opening mental health clinics under the guise of everything else they're saying? Like that is terrifying to me that they're responsible for people's.
Good point. Like
terrifying.
I would hope that some people like say Miss Radical, who already deal with helping mentally ill people, would work there and it wouldn't be completely terrible. But yeah, I agree there's a need for more mental health facilities in BC, but whether the Cons would do it right, I don't know. But it's my attempt at being less biased.
Well, but Riverview was assaulted with lawsuits after, just as that was one of the reasons they never reopened Riverview, because it was so bad in there. Woodlands was also really bad. My uncle was part of Woodlands, and he was part of the settlement in Woodlands. Both those facilities were awful, had massive problems with them. And so, yeah, like institutionalized people like that, I don't know if that's such a good idea, you know? And do I trust the Conservatives to do it?
Even with like the hospitals we have now, the city where I live, their mental health ward is really good. The city I grew up in is horrifyingly bad.
Yeah.
So it varies lots.
Yeah.
The Conservatives want to end mandatory vaccines, not just COVID ones, but any mandatory.
Yeah.
So it varies lots.
Yeah.
The Conservatives want to end mandatory vaccines, not just COVID ones, but any mandatory vaccines. And they want to direct the BC RCMP to ignore federal gun laws. This is a quote from John Rusted. No, I am going to direct police not to put any resources into enforcing federal gun control rules. The Greens want to increase safe supply and supervised injection sites, establish a standard of care for treatment programs for addicts and for mental health. They want to review the Mental Health Act and regulate it along other healthcare professions. They want to have a mental health support option added to 911 calls. and they want to increase healthcare funding for doctors and nurses and create community health centers in all of BC's ridings. These health centers would incorporate or replace urgent care centers if you have an urgent care center in your riding. Just one more thing, Indigenous relations, because there is massive differences between the parties on these. This is my last one, and then you can open it up for people. The NDP, they haven't really said a ton new, but what they've done so far, they've recognized the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. They are working on DRIPA, which is the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, I think, Act. It's to change laws in BC to be in accordance with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Some of the things they've done is return control of child services to certain First Nation bands like the Xhojin. They are working on amending the Land Act to recognize Aboriginal title, which the Supreme Court has said is real, but lots of provinces keep trying to ignore. And they've done some land back movements, like where they've returned Haida Gwaii to the Haida Nation, and they've returned Babine Lake area to the Babine Lake First Nation, where they have like basically complete control of their territory there. The Conservative Party, quote, no bad mouthing of our history. We should be proud of our past and what came before us. So they basically want no one to talk about any atrocities. They want to end any equity-based programs that differentiate based on race, sex, gender, or religion. Again, this is right from their own website. John Rustad has said for quite a long time he wants to end UNDRIP and DRIPA, again, the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, because it stalls development of mining, forestry, and natural gas projects. On the radio interview day before yesterday, I think, they did a debate. He was challenged pretty heavily on this, and he did kind of backtrack and say he wouldn't do that now. But he's been saying it for years. It's still listed on their website. It's still in their policy. I believe what they put in writing over what they say when they're confronted to their face. So in my opinion, yeah, they still want to end it. They want to end the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and replace it with what they call economic reconciliation, which basically they're trying to make it easier to get appointed like chief and council to agree to resource projects for corporations. They're trying to like cover it up in nice sounding language, but that's the intent behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And John Rustad has called Aboriginal title a threat to private property.
Yes.
So they pretty much want to scrap any and all reconciliation stuff. The Green Party has said they will recognize all Indigenous governments and provide them with funding comparable to other levels of government. I don't know if that means compared to municipal funding or what, but they do want to provide more government funding to Indigenous governments.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the Indigenous Language Act to enable the use of Indigenous names on government ID. And they want to overhaul the Land Act to ensure Indigenous communities have input and recognize Aboriginal title.
Well,
that's about it.
Thank you so much. You know,
no problem.
There's a lot of information to unpack in what you just said.
There's a lot. It's an info dump for sure.
I'm hoping to spend the next half hour kind of doing some of that. But first, I just want to thank everybody that's in the room tonight here. We've reached our 20,000 mark in terms of likes and the sharing and stuff like that, because we have new kind of markers to let us know how good we're doing in these lives now, thanks to Nerdy and her tech stuff for us. So we're going to open up. We're going to invite people up. We've already had 2 people waiting here, so hopefully they've got a couple of questions or comments to add to this. And if you have a comment, you're not feeling comfortable coming up into the box, just type it out, and one of us moderators are going to read it and get to it. I really appreciated hearing a lot of it, although there was some things that were striking to me in terms of what the NDP is laying out there with that layer of the 40% around the housing. My question around that, so I could start the ball rolling here to let everybody else, my question around that is, when you say that 40% is basically guaranteed back to the developers, who's the developer? Like, is that the bank and the mortgage company? Is this people that are building their houses from scratch? Or is it available to people who are buying an existing property? I was a little confused.
It's not available for existing properties. It's only available for new homes, from what I can tell. Like, I'm not an expert on this, just from what I've read. It says it's going to the developer. So any home builder could go, I don't know if they'll set up a program or what, but they'll get either the land portion for free or at a reduced rate, or if there's no land available in that municipality, they'll get funding. And then they're required to pass those savings on to any first-time home buyer.
Oh, see, the way they've got it laid out on their platform, because they just uploaded their new platform today. They unveiled it at a press conference. Yeah. What it says in there is, it says first-time home buyers, and the government's going to cover 40% of the cost in kind of like a, they didn't actually specify how they were going to do that, but you would only pay 60%. And then when the house sells, or after 25 years, you pay that back. But the way it's worded on the website doesn't say it's just for new builds. It says first-time home buyers.
Okay.
That's what it says.
I know when I was reading on it, and I probably have the link on my phone somewhere here, but it was saying it was in the form of funding for developers or in the form of public land being used for it.
Okay.
So that makes it sound like it's only for new builds. Not just you can go buy any house and they'll cover 40%. That wasn't how it was structured, at least what I was reading, unless they've changed it or updated it, which is entirely possible. I don't have like the newer thing you're looking at. Yeah,
it was just a generalization off of their website. They've uploaded it. I guess the cons are the only ones who haven't loaded anything new up to their website. But EB just announced the platform in his presser today around 3 o'clock, I think it was, or something like that. But yeah, I wonder how that's going to work. Like, do you think the bank is going to mortgage for the whole cost, or is the bank, or is your mortgage would only be for the 60% value, right?
No, as far as I know, you'd have it because they said after you sell the house or 25 years, whichever comes first, you have to pay back the government.
Yeah.
So you're going to have some kind of agreement with the government as well as your mortgage, probably.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it's structured, though.
But that's actually, sorry, go ahead.
I heard David Eby when he was talking about it, that first announcement last week when he mentioned this. What he was saying was that he has made arrangements and basically contracts, I guess, with financial institutions.
Okay.
One of my main points was that he was able to negotiate with financial institutions to take the risk that this BC economy would support that 40% interest.
Right. That's a good point.
Deals. Yeah. And that's, BC has one of the best economies in Canada at the macro level, which feeds all these little pieces, right? So I picked up on that when he was making that first announcement.
Interesting. Yeah. Well,
what's the address for that new platform?
It's the BCNDP's website.
When I go to like bcndp.ca, I don't see that anywhere.
Oh.
I'll tell you this. I was on that website on my phone, and they must have been downloading it in the moment, because I could not, like, through search in the menu, find the new platform. It should just be a square, like, where to donate is there, right?
I've already made 3 videos
all I
from
see is the donate stuff everywhere. I don't see any platform thing listed on here.
What I ended
Latest news?
Yeah, I ended up just swiping back and the platform came up and I wasn't sure how that happened.
Huh.
But it was
Interesting,
there.
because I've already made 3 videos off the platform, off the information off that off their website.
So if you go to the bcndp.ca, scroll down. It's not in the menu. It's the next. If you scroll down on the page, it says "Read the platform," and that's where it should be.
Yeah, that was not there earlier this afternoon.
No.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that here at all still.
Well, last week I got caught from somebody on the video that I made where I was talking about how John Rustad was going to repeal UNDRIP and imprison anybody protesting the extraction of resources in the province.
Yep.
And somebody says, "Where is that? Where is that?" Well, I went back to the Conservative website and I couldn't find it anywhere.
When they changed it, I talked about that. You have to use the Wayback Machine because after they got heat, they went and like redacted a whole bunch of stuff off there and tried to hide
I know.
it.
And I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry. It actually, I don't lie, honest. And they're like, yeah, right.
Yeah, that's weird. It's not showing up on my page at all. I don't know if it's like my cache is not letting me load the new one or what.
So
it's
if
in
you look-
small print. There you go. There's like no banner. It's just in small print.
It's it's just at the end of the paragraph.
Yeah.
It's probably more generalized of what you pulled up, because I had the
I think it
NDP
is.
caucus report, which is like 85 pages long. That was the one I had.
Yeah, it's not saying how they're structuring it on this thing,
No.
but it did on the other one that I saw where it was saying it was for new builds and they're basically subsidizing new home builds, and then they have to pass that savings on to new time home buyers with an agreement that when the house sells, the home buyer reimburses the government.
Whatever conservative.
And like I said, I think I said it before you were here, Miss Lotus Lady. It says you have to pay back the 40% plus 40% of the equity if it's accrued. So basically, the NDP is investing in your house and they get rewarded for it. But if the market tanks and you sell at a loss, you still have to reimburse the full 40%.
Really?
So they're mitigating all of the risk.
Right.
But they're taking part of the reward.
Right.
Now, I'm not trying to crap on the plan. Like, it's still a decent plan. Like, it is going to actually help put people in a home. And the likelihood of prices coming down significantly, I think, is still never going to happen because 25% of our GDP is in housing and no one can afford to let it happen. So it's probably a decent plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's would I like to see them do more? Would I like to see them do rent to own programs? Absolutely. Like, I would much prefer something like that, or even leaseholds.
Yeah.
I have no problem with leaseholds either. Like, this idea of creating generational wealth, I think that idea needs to die. Like, honestly, I really think that idea needs to die. And so, like, if you want to do leaseholds, that's great too. At least you're secured a place to live forever. And, as long as you're alive, right?
I would like to see them incorporate the Greens thing there on vacancy rent controls.
Yes.
To prohibit landlords
Tied
from
to the
evicting
unit,
people and
not
jacking up their rent.
Tied to the unit, not to the person. I know the Vancouver Tenants Union has been fighting for that for a really long time, and they keep lobbying the housing minister, the BC NDP housing minister as well, to make that change in the province. But something that's not money related, but is actually really good for pet owners, is that they would plan to make it illegal to be biased against anybody who has a pet. And this will stop.
That's only in like strictly
purpose-built rentals. Sorry,
purpose-built rental units. Yeah, landlords with basement suites can still say no pets.
Right.
Go ahead, sorry.
Right. Yeah. So, but still, purpose-built rentals. They can't discriminate against you for having a pet anymore, which is huge, because there were some people that were taking it to like the nth degree, like no hamsters, nothing in a cage, nothing, you can't have any, not even a stuffed one, right? Like it's like, it was so bad. And but the fallout from that is that it put pressure on our pounds, right? So it put pressure on the SPCA, it put pressure on the Vancouver pound, the North Shore pound, all of that stuff. And people were abandoning their pets because they couldn't take them with them.
All right. I thank you for these comments. Thank you for still hanging out with us. Xhojin. Sorry. Xhojin. Did I get it right? Okay. I just want to say the name right. I'd like Mr. Radical to have the opportunity to say something if you're.
Yeah, Xhojin, big fan of your material, but I want to, just as a roundabout question, you mentioned that it was a bit of an information dump, and so for the average person in BC voting, which party really represents the people as of right now in BC?
Like, what do you mean by represents? Which has their best interests at heart?
Absolutely,
Or
yeah. When you look at,
which is
at
like
the
more
general
popular?
policy, sorry, go ahead.
I just said what do you mean by represent? Which is more popular? Because like the Conservatives are certainly representing people's anger, but I think their policies are horrible for most of the people who plan on voting for them.
Yeah, what I mean by is when you look at a policy level kind of generalized across the board, which party kind of brings the most meat and potatoes as far as actual policies are concerned here in BC? Because we're looking at NDP and voting for NDP because we believe that the NDP in general has the most interest of the people at heart and actually have some track record to back that up.
I would agree with that. I like the NDP. I'm like fairly happy with them. I'm a pretty big fan of Sonia Furstenau and the Green Party too, to be honest. I don't even know if they have people running in every riding. I don't think so.
You don't.
So you have a little bit of the am I wasting my vote or not kind of conundrum with them, but I really like a lot of what they say and stand for. I'm like a pretty big fan, but I would be happy with NDP or with the Green Party. I think both of them have lots of ideas that actually are trying to solve problems and not just stoke people's anger to get in power for themselves. Like they're trying to form solutions for complex problems instead of just simpler rhetoric, right?
I appreciate
And that's something that I find important. One of the unfortunate things about the 4-year system is a lot of these policies that get implemented, we never really get to see the full term results because they never last particularly past 4 or 5 years. And it would be interesting to see a little bit longer trend in one of our political parties to see that, once we establish some of these new ideas, what does it look like actually on the long term?
Well, we kind of experienced that on the opposite end. I know you guys weren't living here, but 16 years of BC Liberals, by the time they left office, they had pretty much destroyed the province. Like it was bad. It was so bad. So we did have an opportunity to see a long-term government, but it was the opposite side.
That is all the same people who are now in the BC Conservative Party.
Yeah.
They're the people who look the other way for money laundering, who stole money from ICBC and jacked our rates up, who tried almost bankrupt ICBC. We know what we got with them. We did see the long-term effect. Like, for the love of God, people, don't go back.
Well, do you guys, so the people who have been around BC for a while, do you understand where these voters are coming from for the BC Conservatives? Like, do they not remember Christy Clark and Kevin Falcone? Are they younger? Is that what it is? Or are they transplants?
I just saw a horrifying stat, and I think it was for BC or BC Conservatives. It might have been federal, though, but it was saying the big trend on the latest polls is that women supporting conservatives went from like 26% to 45%.
I saw that.
And young people went like the same kind of thing, like it like doubled.
Yeah.
So it is, unfortunately, like young people and women. Like I'm not saying they're whole responsible because all the guys, a whole bunch of guys were already still there and they haven't changed.
But,
Yeah.
that's
but
like
the
that's where a big
conservatives
increase
are
is
at the
coming from.
church every Sunday. They're at the church. They're at the altar.
And young people were
Yeah.
not here. Young people didn't experience like Harper's government or
That's
Christy Clark's
true.
government.
Honestly, I put
And
myself.
they're like, yeah, shit's terrible. We need a change. These guys are saying it's terrible. I'm going to vote for them, but it's like they're even worse, man.
Yeah.
Hey, I struggle. I voted for Harper. I was at a different stage in my life, though.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I did at 18
was
years old,
a
too.
young mom.
Yeah.
My husband was in oil and gas at the time,
Yeah.
and we were in a place of thankfulness
Yeah.
and just not realizing what was happening around us. It wasn't until Mr. Radical was like, give your head a shake, lady. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Where we
yeah.
were starting to realize what the hell was going on around us.
Mhm.
But when we were having babies, we were in a different space and not realizing the dangers around us.
But I wanna throw this out there, just how influential the members of the oil patch are in this business. The first time I saw anything connected with replacement theory was in the oil patch from another engineer. So, you know, in a lot of cases here, and I use this rather loosely, but you can take the rig out of the pig, but you can't take the pig off of the rig.
Right.
You know, and that's very true in the oil patch, because the reality is, for a lot of these people that are in the oil patch, whatever party supports the oil patch, they are going to vote for them, because a lot of these oil patch guys know they are not going to make 150 grand a year anywhere else in their life. So they will fight for the oil patch tooth and nail.
And what you're asking them to do, by the way, is you're asking them to face bankruptcy. You're asking them to reject their livelihood, to subscribe to what we know is right and true. And that's a hard thing. Mr. Radical got there, you know, because he was out there firsthand and seeing the devastation that was happening on the rig. And he came to me and he said, we're not going to be able to, like, I can't deal with this being on my hands. Like the ramifications. But we took,
That's what lots of them feel, but
we took such a hit. It took us almost 10 years to recover from the choice of walking away from that industry.
The reason why I'm asking the people who have lived in BC for a while, the reason why I asked them what they thought was because this is not the demographic. Like growing up, I could have never foreseen, like I've lived in BC my entire life. I was born and raised here, and I lived here except for 3 years I lived in Alberta, and I would have never, ever in my wildest dreams thought BC would embrace fascism and that authoritarian book censorship kind of thing. And I was just wondering if my fellow BCers, no offense to you guys, because
It's not an offense to me. I'll just correct you respectfully. Mr. Radical has grown up in BC his whole life.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. I didn't
Just as
know
a
that.
perspective point of view,
it
Yeah.
I
doesn't
might
surprise
not
me.
be from BC, but Mr. Radical has
Yeah.
grown up and has educated me on that perspective.
Yeah. Maybe it's because I'm from
I
the
grew
Lower
up in
Mainland.
Prince George,
Yeah.
and it's very conservative. It does not surprise me that they're embracing a whole lot of that kind of stuff.
Really?
Like,
Because
not even a little bit.
See, I guess because I'm in the Lower Mainland, right? I guess it's true what they say about the Lower Mainland, right? Like, I just never suspected that it would be like people would embrace it. Like we've got people in Maple Ridge who have like Trump 2024 signs on their lawns.
But you know what? That's our naiveness as Canadians. I said the same thing when I was out in Alberta. I remember walking past a secretary in my elementary school, and she started spewing Tucker Carlson at me. And I said, really? You know what I mean? I was just like this, like,
Yeah.
really? Are we here? Oh my gosh, I can't
Yeah.
believe this.
But BC's, yeah.
I think we have to believe what we're seeing around us. And if we look at American politics, the GOP and the Republicans are a brand. We watched Stephen Harper crawl into the back doors of the Trump White House.
Oh, yeah.
Within weeks, he said, I am responsible for bringing in the Trump playbook to Canada. And we watched all of those people embrace that. So it's not a shock to me.
And I'm not surprised either, because what you're talking about, Mrs. Radical, is federal conversation. And we as British Columbians, younger people, people in the North, people that have been radicalized, have been scooped up by the federal Conservative Party that spent 2 years here in British Columbia doing what you referred to earlier, going door to door, doing the legwork, shaking people's hands, and out there going to the churches, right?
Well, actually,
has happened.
I was listening to a Vancouver Sun columnist interview, and he was saying that a lot of people don't even realize that John Rustad they're not voting for John Rustad because he's got actually only 38% approval rating, whereas Evie's at 46%. Yet the Conservative Party right now is in the lead of the NDP party after last night's debate. And they're saying that people don't think they're voting for Rustad. They actually think they're voting for Pierre.
Yeah. People don't understand the political parties are separate from the federal parties.
Yeah. And they really believe they're voting for Pierre. And they're going to vote out the libs. And it's like, I'm not kidding. Like, they're going to vote out the libs. And I'm like,
Yep.
When I look at what people, and how politics can spin people, and talking about people know the history of British Columbia and that players are the old Liberal Party. That piece I think is missing for a lot of people. It's just not there. And the reality is to fix 15 years, because that's what the libs slash conservatives had here, dripping down our systems that were heavy and layered bureaucracy to protect the system. They have taken away nursing contracts, teachers' contracts, just going to tear up that first agreement with Indigenous people. They destroyed all of that. What they did with the gambling, selling off our housing, right? Starting a cascade of housing insecurity across Canada.
Did they try to sell BC Hydro?
Actually, they tried to privatize BC Hydro.
And they privatized BC Rail.
Yep.
And the other thing they did is they took the transfer systems, money coming in federally, that used feds gave money for social services, say $100 billion, like $100 million. It got spent on social services.
Yeah. Oh, her mic's muted.
You lost your mic, Mrs.
Oh.
Just raving away here. So what I'm saying is that the dismantling of 15 years cannot be fixed in form, like Mr. Radical was talking about with those 4-year cycles. So here we have a government that started out with the BC NDP and the Green Partnership. Evie's only been in power 2 years.
Yeah.
He's only been in power 2 years, and look what he's done.
I know.
Thanks to the previous 4 years of, So anyway,
I got to say to him.
We were just talking how people think they're voting out the Liberals if they vote for the Conservatives in BC election, and we just had a commenter say bye bye Liberals, so I just had to
Maisie, shush.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was at the rally on Sunday, and I got my picture with EB, and I got to talk to him very briefly, and I got an opportunity to say to him, like, and I really mean this, he's the best premier we've had since Dave Barrett.
I I was really mad when he became our premier because I thought they kind of handled that whole thing shady. But I have to admit, he's done a really good job. Like,
Yeah.
I got to give him credit. He's done a really good job, even though I was mad in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? After seeing so many party takeovers, I'm kind of glad they put their foot down over that whole thing. The third party that did the illegal thing. Like, for me, I'm tired of parties infiltrating and trying to take over parties, right? Like, that's so I think that they did the right thing to keep the integrity of their party with their party values, et cetera, et cetera. But and I never held that against him, how he came to power. That's just my opinion on it. Nothing to do with the young lady. I don't blame her at all. But I think that we don't like the third parties that are working for Polyevra and Maisie. Shush. For Polyevra and Rustad, BC Rising. We don't like those third parties doing it for the conservative side. So I think, I have to say I don't like it when somebody does it for our side either, right?
This is radical.
It's not too late to put in your early voting applications. It's not too late to plan and strategize what voting looks like for you in BC. So start thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will note it's 6 o'clock in our conversation. We're going for a few more hours here, but
Xhojin?
the closure, is there anything you would like to wrap this conversation up with? Or I will be, of course, we'd like to hang around for 10 or 15 more minutes if that's,
I'll sure have something to wrap it up. I wanted to talk just about the importance of voting.
Yes.
Two things. We have like a closed system, right? So all a party needs to win is to get more votes than the other party. So if you don't vote for someone, you are by default voting for someone because you are making it easier for whatever the worst option is to win. So even if all of your options aren't exactly what you want, you really should vote. And then specifically for people who say like all parties are bad, or like for the federal level, I've heard people talk about like Israel, Palestine, and like, oh, they're all support Israel. I support Palestine. I can't vote for anyone. In a situation like that, where all of the parties support one thing, whether you vote or not does not change if that thing happens. So you not voting doesn't do anything. But those parties can have differences on other things. And then if you're not voting, you are making whatever party is worse on those other things more likely to win. So like I think we all have a duty to vote. Even if the options aren't exactly what we wanted. It's super important.
I like that. I like that thought, and closing up with that thought, because I think we're unrealistic sometimes in thinking that a party can fix everything and in a short period of time, or one person. Everybody's, nobody's infallible, so to speak. And so I think that people who come to the table with idealistic goals can be so disappointed, because you have to take the best and you have to leave the rest. And so when you make your decision this voting, I think more important in this BC election than any is history. History is going to either repeat itself under the BC Conservatives, or we're going to spring off into a new era around having our human rights protected, having Indigenous rights protected, and just moving forward with a softer approach to protecting who we are as human beings. And I see that, like, it's hard. I see that in the ideological pieces that are driving these parties, right? I see that. But when it comes to boots on the ground, we're going to be disappointed by any one particular person in any one particular measure. But in this election, more than anything, we need to know our history. We need to know that the players are repeating themselves. History is repeating itself here. The advances in truth and reconciliation are going to be wiped out. Like the critical pieces. It's good to know that in the NDP's work with truth and reconciliation, that BC's economy has grown to the biggest in Canada while respecting Indigenous rights more than anybody else, like the child care service that you were talking about. It's nowhere near where it needs to be, but there's at least a plan now. There is at least...
BC's probably done better than any other provincial government on that, and there's still a long way to go.
And we have, and we really need to make a plan. These are the times, you know, where we're calling our voting office, we're getting our cards checked out, we're making a plan. Are we going to vote online? Are we going to early vote or check out where we're going to vote? I heard somebody say in the last election it was too hard to go there. It was bullshit. It took me 2 minutes to, like, literally, I called our office. I have 3 special needs individuals that live in my environment. We made a plan with them. We went in, we had a room to ourselves, and all of those individuals voted on their own. It took me 15 minutes arriving from the parking lot to leaving the parking lot.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
You can register to vote by mail now. You can send off your request for it, and early voting starts on the 10th.
Yeah.
Just so people know.
Anyway, all right, we're going to wrap this show up. Again, much appreciation.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Children, thanks for being here.
It's enlightening. You know, there were pieces that I wasn't being aware of, and I really like that you were not so super biased that we couldn't hear the messaging from the Conservative plan. I wanted to hear that messaging, and I wanted it to be stated in a way that didn't say, oh, listen to this, it's an idiot idea. This is the plan, and then this is the NDP plan, this is the Green Party plan.
I'm pretty obviously biased, but everything on there is like, it's directly from what they have said.
Yeah, that's important. And okay, so I'm going to leave my last piece there. Thank you, Mrs. Radical, Nerdy Mr. Radical, for coming up. And we'll see you all same place, same time next week.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Xhojin.
Thanks for everybody.
Thank you, Nerdy.
Have a good night, everyone.
No problem. I'll fix the subscriptions, and they should be available on our bio because there's a subscription button there, but I'll fix that and get it all going.
Hey, someone wanted to subscribe. Yay.
I know.
I can't even wait. You know, it's like that fruit salad concept, you know.
We'll have a YouTube eventually. Not
Together
right now,
we're
though. We'll have it
amazing.
eventually. Yeah.
Do you guys post these anywhere? Like, cause I missed MS Lotus Ladies last week.
I'm gonna download them, and then I'll work on getting the YouTube up and running so we can post it on there.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay.
All
All right. Good night, everybody.
Have a good one.
Night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you to our audience.